before we move people in here, we might want to make sure we get all these leaks fixed. Huh? Don't we have a pretty new roof? How old is this roof? Is it? Obviously, yeah. Okay. All right. Hey. It's December 29th, right? On the right day? December 29th. It's almost the end of the year. I want to just start out by reminding us that next Sunday, January 5th, is going to be kind of our focus envisioning Sunday for this coming season, for the coming year. Art and Keiston are going to kind of lead us in that. Just very excited about what God has for us here at ELC and the word that He's spoken to us, some of the clarity that He's given us. And so please be here next Sunday. Invite other people to be here next Sunday. I just can't express just how excited we are about what God's doing and about where we're headed. And so I'm preaching this morning kind of like New Year's is right around the corner, and I love New Year's. I think New Year's is my favorite holiday, and I was thinking about it this morning, like, why is that? And I think it's because I just love a good reset. Anyone else relate to that? Anyone else love just a chance to just fresh start? Let's set some goals that I probably won't reach. Let's quit some bad habits and start some new ones. And January 1st, New Year, that's what it's all about, right? And so I had kind of an idea of what I was going to share about this morning, and then Christmas night, I was laying in bed, and I just felt God just kind of put this passage on my heart. And it is maybe my favorite couple of chapters in the Bible, so that helps. But we're just going to start out by just looking at Hebrews chapter 11 today. Just felt like God wanted to encourage us a bit and kind of posture our hearts a bit as we end this year and look forward to a new year and to what He's doing. And I feel like this is a pretty good way to do that. So, Hebrews 11 is oftentimes called the faith chapter. I'm just going to start out by just reading this chapter. It's kind of long. But I'm going to read it in the Message translation. I just love how Eugene Peterson puts it. I think he puts it so simply and concisely, easy to understand. I would encourage you guys, as I read this, if you have the Message translation and want to follow along, great. If not, to just kind of listen. And I love the idea of, like, as we hear this, as I read this, of us just like taking ownership of these stories. So Christmas, a lot of times at Christmas, obviously we get together with family, and it's a time to, I think, kind of reflect a bit on our heritage, even on our, we have parents, grandparents, lineage, if you will. And as I read this chapter, it's what this is to me. It's what this is to us. It's easy to hear these names and think of some of these characters as these stories that we're, maybe overly familiar with. But I want to encourage you to try to hear this morning and again say, like, these are my stories. These are our stories. These are my heritage. These are my ancestors. These are the people that have paved the way for us. And they've passed us the baton, and now they're watching us and they're cheering us on as we step into and try to live into the same life of faith that they did. So I'm going to read this, Hebrews chapter 11. This is our story. This is our history. These are our ancestors. This is the legacy that's been left for us as people of faith. So here we go. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks even though he's dead. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was unable to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. I just realized I'm reading this in the NIV translation. Yeah. So if you're following along, you're probably like, this sounds really familiar to the one that I'm reading. Nice. It's all right. I'm going to keep going. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, and so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. By faith, he kept the Passover and the application of blood so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around them for 7 days. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and in holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. I do want to read this last part in chapter 12 in the actual Message translation. He says, "Do you see what this means? All these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on. It means we better get on with it. Strip down, start running, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we're in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed, that exhilarating finish in and with God. He could put up with anything along the way, cross, shame, whatever. And now he's there in the place of honor, right alongside God. When you find yourselves flagging in your faith, go over that story again, item by item, that long litany of hostility he plowed through, and that will shoot adrenaline into your souls." Anyone else want some adrenaline shot in their souls? Sounds pretty nice, doesn't it? I love that. That's what I feel like this passage does for me every time I read it. Shoots adrenaline into my soul. I love this picture described at the beginning of chapter 12. And again, the NIV translation, which I already read, it says, "We are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses." The NLT says, "We are surrounded by a huge cloud of witnesses to the life of faith." The Message translation says, "All these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on." I love that picture. Here's Abraham, Joseph, Moses, Rahab, Gideon, Samson, David, all these prophets, Elijah and Elisha, Isaiah, Daniel, Jonah, so many more, witnesses to the life of faith, surrounding us like a cloud, pioneers who blazed the way, and they're cheering us on. They didn't get it right all the time, but each one of these people took radical steps of faith, and their lives were changed forever because of it. They were witnesses to a totally different, upside-down kingdom reality. Their lives didn't make sense to people. They were persecuted because of the choices that they made, but every one of them would tell you it was worth it. And now they're cheering us on because it's only together with us and our lives and our steps of faith that God's story is being made complete, whole, and perfect. Isn't that crazy? That his plans are being made complete. We're part of a legacy, a history, a family. We have ancestors surrounding us, cheering us on, saying, "Don't give up. Don't grow weary and lose hope. Don't settle for an ordinary life. Take radical steps of faith. Follow Jesus with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, whatever the cost, it's worth it." Let's look again at what the author of Hebrews says in chapter 12, the beginning of chapter 12. "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith." This life of faith, this radically different, upside-down life following Jesus that just doesn't make sense to a watching world, requires a few things. And they all just happen to start with the same letter. It's crazy. So I want to kind of point those things out, and I'm going to go through this quickly. I had a lot more planned, but I'm not going to get too caught up in the weeds. I'm just going to run through these, and then we're going to take some time at the end to, I just want to give us time to just kind of respond to this. So here we go. The life of faith. a few things that I think Hebrews 11 and 12 points out that the life of faith requires, and that as we think about starting a new year, having this new renewed focus for the year 2025, I think it's important to keep some of these things in mind. So the first thing that the life of faith requires is patience. Not an easy virtue in our world of immediate gratification, wanting everything now. But I was struck by this verse in Hebrews 11:13. It says, each one of these people of faith died, not yet having in hand what was promised, but still believing. Isn't that crazy? They did these wild things that most of us couldn't even dream or imagine. They took these wild steps of faith that cost them absolutely everything, and they didn't even get to see what was promised them. And yet, they still believe. How is that? Well, one of the ways that the text points out, it says, well, they were looking ahead to a heavenly country, a different world, a heavenly reality. It says that they saw themselves as aliens, as strangers, as foreigners in this world. They knew that this life is temporary, this life is fleeting, this life is a vapor, and they had a long-term vision. They were chasing after a reward that was eternal. I'd also suggest that these people didn't see themselves as the main characters in the story, right? The story that they were living in wasn't about them. They knew that this is God's story. This is about what He's doing in His world, and they were just privileged to play a small part in it. So they didn't need to see everything come to fruition because God is so much bigger. What He's doing spans such a longer length of time than the little blip that we are on the screen. At the end of the day, patience is about understanding that we are called to simply be witnesses to a different world, a different reality, faithful image bearers, sons and daughters of a totally different kind of king. And that's our calling, regardless of results, regardless of whether our church grows or shrinks, whether we're liked or we're hated, whether we see any kind of fruit. May we patiently, faithfully work for a reward that is eternal and be content to play a small part in God's much bigger story. This is about Him and what He's doing. And as His sons and daughters, we get to play a small part in it. So the first thing it requires is patience. The second thing the life of faith requires is persistence. I love the definition of persistence. Here's the definition. It says, firm or obstinate continuance in a course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. Firm or obstinate continuance in a course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. So then I went on to look up the definition of obstinate. And it's pretty similar. Obstinance is stubbornly refusing to change one's chosen course of action despite attempts to persuade one to do so. Do you say something about kids? Kids? Linda's got some kids that are obstinate. She knows what that means. Stubbornly refusing to change one's course of action despite attempts to persuade one to do so. So do you get the gist of this? Persistence. I don't know about you guys, but as I kind of reflect on this past year, I'm realizing that I'm still struggling in some of the same areas that I've struggled in for way too long. Thanks, Linda. I'm still far from who I want to be. I still don't spend enough time with God in prayer. I don't love people the way I want to. I'm so easily distracted, lazy, fearful, not the husband I want to be, the friend I want to be, the leader I want to be, the servant I want to be. And it's so easy to get frustrated at times and just feel like, man, life is hard. This life is really hard, and I just want to give up. I don't know that I can keep trying to do better and failing over and over. I found myself over the last week just being like, God, am I ever going to get there? I've tried many times. But the life of faith requires persistence, obstinate, stubborn continuance in a course of action Get back on the horse, right? You failed again this year. You failed again this week. You failed again yesterday, today. Get back on the horse. It's a new day. It's a new year. God's grace is new every morning. The bar is perfection. It's going to take an eternity for us to get there. Don't quit. It's the little steps of faith on a daily basis that no one else sees that counts. That's what adds up in the long run. So what is it that's hindering you? What's the sin that's entangling you? Throw it off and keep running. Maybe you've thrown it off 1,000,000 times. Do it 1,000,001. Obstinate continuance, stubbornly refusing to change course. Keep running the race. It's a marathon. The life of faith requires persistence. The third thing that it requires is perseverance. The definition of perseverance is this: persistence in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. Not a lot new to say here. Other than that, perseverance is basically the combination of these first two things, patience and persistence. It's persistence despite difficulty or delay. It's obstinate continuance. It's stubbornly refusing to change course regardless of difficulty or delay, regardless of results. It's patiently persisting. So how do we do that? I want to go back to the text here. Hebrews 11, verse 24 gives us an idea. Hebrews 11:24 says this: "By faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a short time. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible." He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. In the Message translation, it says, he had his eye on the one no eye can see. And he persevered. He patiently persisted. He obstinately continued. He stubbornly refused to change course because he saw him who's invisible. He had his eye on the one no eye can see. Which leads us to the last thing that the life of faith requires, and that's perspective. So what's the right perspective to have in order to live the life of faith? Hebrews 12, 1 and 2 says this: "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of God." Here's how the Message translation says it. I want to read that one more time. "Do you see what this means? All these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on. It means we better get on with it. Strip down, start running, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race that we're in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. That exhilarating finish in and with God. He could put up with anything along the way. Cross, shame, whatever. And now he's there in the place of honor right alongside God. When you find yourselves flagging in your faith, go over that story again, item by item. That long litany of hostility he plowed through, that will shoot adrenaline into your souls." How do we run the race? How do we live a life of faith which requires patience, persistence, and perseverance? We do it by having the right perspective. One that says, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. That is our theme. That is our focus as we go into the new year. Again, Art and Keeston are going to be sharing a lot more about that next week. My challenge for today is for each of us to be thinking about and just praying about what that looks like in your life. It's easy to say, I keep my eyes fixed on Jesus. All right. What does that look like practically? I was thinking this week about how annoyed I get when I'm trying to talk to somebody and they're on their phone texting or they're watching a video or something like that, and they may even be like, "Yeah, I'm listening." I'm like, "Look at me." I don't think you'll look at me. Like, look at my eyes. And I thought, man, I get the feeling that Jesus is tired of fighting for my attention, fighting for our attention. Luckily, he's eternally patient. But I can't help but wonder how different things would be if I just got rid of all the things that were distracting me, all the things that are grasping for my attention. Our time, our attention, our focus, our gaze, that is our greatest resource. And because of that, we live in a world that's fighting to capture that all the time. What we focus on, what we gaze at, shapes our longings and desires and ultimately shapes who we become. And so what if, in a radical step of faith, we sought to throw off the distractions that were hindering us and simply said, "Jesus, I'm yours. I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep you front and center, to keep my gaze, my focus, my eyes fixed on you, period." That's our goal as a body heading into the new year. So my hope is that these passages encourage us, that we get a clear glimpse of the cloud of witnesses that are surrounding us, cheering us on, that we're inspired by their faith, and remember the larger story that we're a part of, that we keep our eyes fixed on the pioneer. These guys are all pioneers. Jesus is the pioneer and perfecter of the faith. But again, as we end this year and think about moving into a new year and taking on this perspective, I want to just give us some time this morning to do some internal evaluating and just thinking about what are the things that are maybe hindering me, holding me back. I love that the first part says in chapter 12 here, it says to throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. So it's not even necessarily that I have to have some big sin in my life, but just what are the things that hinder me from running the race, from keeping my eyes fixed on Jesus? What are the other things that are fighting for my attention and for my focus? And maybe there is sin in my life that I need to repent of and throw off as well. But before we move on and into this new year, I want us to just take some time this morning to just think about that. And take some time even to just lay some of those things down. To just surrender again. I came in here this morning and I was like, sweet, I've got a sermon with 4 points that all start with the same letter, and that's how it's done. But I was like, man, I don't want to come in here and act like I've got it all together when I so obviously don't. I want to come in here as someone who is vulnerable and transparent and who can say I'm a mess and I have a lot of things that hinder me and entangle me and things that I need to lay down, things before I can even think about starting a new year and a new season and a change in perspective that I just need to repent of. And things that I just am tired of, like I said, struggling with, that I have for so long. Some of you guys know a couple years ago that I ended up in the ER, in the hospital. I think I was having a heart attack. I was having serious chest pains and had been for a couple weeks, and was actually here in the church when it got to the point that I couldn't take it anymore, and Steve and Karen were out there, prayed for me, and went to the hospital. Thought for sure I was driving there thinking this is the last car ride I'm ever going to take. I'm going to have a heart attack. I mean, it's crazy. And I got there, and every test was fine, and they were like, it's anxiety. I'm like, what? I don't have anxiety. And my body was telling me something different, obviously. But, man, there's still so many times where, when I face things that are hard, when I face things that are scary, creeps back up again. This morning, some stuff went down at the recovery home, and so I'm driving back from Plainfield this morning at 4 a.m. and having chest pains and sick to my stomach, and just wrestling with God again, like, just take this stuff. I want to be able to face hard things, enter into like the pain of the world, and not have it just completely debilitate me, and not have it make me feel like I just want to run the other way. I want to like face things with courage and confidence. Like, just take this anxiety. I don't want this, And I wasn't yelling in the car because Meg was asleep, but I was yelling in my head. And it kind of reminded me of like the thorn in the flesh thing that Paul struggled with. It kind of reminded me of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Like, God, take this cup from me. I'd rather not struggle. I'd rather not suffer. But then I was like, man, when things are going pretty well, I don't do the greatest job of actually like coming to God. I don't do the greatest job of keeping my eyes fixed on Him and pursuing Him. It's in these moments where I'm like at my weakest and sickest that I realize my need for Him. And so yeah, it's just one of those things like, man, I'm tired of struggling with this, but I need another opportunity to just lay all this before Him and be like, I am a weak, limited human being that has a lot of things that I struggle with, and God, I need your grace. Like, I need your Spirit. I need your presence every day, and I want to recommit to changing my perspective, shifting my focus, and keeping my eyes fixed on you, whether times are good or bad. I need to do that. I need to do that this morning. And maybe there's some others that feel like maybe we need to do that as well. Just kind of say, God, I want to throw off all the things that are hindering me. Maybe there's sin in my life that's tangling me up. I want to repent of that. I want to throw that off so that I can keep my eyes fixed. I want to recommit to keeping my eyes fixed on you as we begin this new year. So I asked Emily if we could just play a couple more songs here. And I just want to give us a time to just respond a little bit. I do think, God is maybe, I know He's talking to me, maybe He's talking to a few more of us, saying like, are there things that you need to lay down, things that you need to surrender, things that you've struggled with for a long time that you just want to invite me in to deal with and to heal, and just recommit to saying, God, as I look back at this year, as I look back at where I'm at now, I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I thought I would be, and so I want to recommit. I want to reshift my gaze. All these things that are trying to distract me, these things that are fighting for my attention, Lord, I want to put those aside and say, for this new year, God, I want to commit to keep my eyes fixed on you and running the race with patience, persistence, perseverance, as I'm cheered on by this cloud of witnesses that have gone before us. So if you would, if you and Mom would just play, we're going to take some time to just worship a little bit more, and I just want to give you guys a chance to just respond however you see fit, whether you want to stand and sing, whether you want to sit and journal and pray, whether you want to find someone to pray with you. I'm going to be up here willing to pray for anyone that would like prayer for anything that you feel like, I want to throw this off, I want to give this up, I want to surrender this. Obviously not as someone who has done that well or has it figured out, but as a fellow race runner, I would love to come beside you and pray for you. And let's just lay things down as we come to the end of the year. Let's take this time to surrender, lay down whatever it is that's hindering us, entangling us, and say, God, we want to be free to pursue you with our whole heart, to fix our eyes solely on you as we jump into 2025 here. So Yeah, you want to share something, Art?
I think Jesse was encouraging us to consider, the areas of struggle. And I would just like to ask all of you sitting here, how many of you feel like you have failed in some way this past year? Yeah. I just felt like the Lord says one of the bigger struggles that we face is since I failed. Yes. You know what I mean? There is a scripture that said all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Just missing the bullseye when you shoot the arrow. We all can do that. And while Lee was ministering, I just felt like God quickened me to that. This morning before I came to church, there's a passage of scripture that came to mind. In Hebrews 12, it talks about this great cloud of witnesses. These are the men and the women who actually see God do something in their lives or around them, and they recorded it. The Bible is full of testimony. All right? And David was very good at recording testimony of not only his failures, but God's response. Are you with me? So I'd like to just read two scriptures to you. For those of us, I was struggling yesterday just looking back over my life, and I go, oh God. It's amazing how we can remember the failures in our lives, the shortcomings, the sins. But this is his testimony in the midst of his walk. David had his ups or downs, some of the most egregious sins that anybody could have. He committed adultery, killed the woman that he had adultery with, killed her husband, and you go on and on. But in the end, this is what he said in Psalms 145, verse 8. He says, this is the testimony. The Lord is gracious. On this side of all my failures, I want to declare the Lord is gracious. That means he's pleasant, tender toward, and full of compassion. He's merciful, full of mercy, full of tenderness, and full of love. Slow to anger, he's patient and postured to uphold us instead of pull us down. And he said he's great in mercy. He has an intense, kind posture for us. And then he made this statement. He said, the Lord upholds, he sustains and refreshes all who fall, all who fail. Say the word all with me. All. He sustains and refreshes everyone who fails, who's collapsed, who's been brought to ruin. And he raises up, he comforts all those that are bent or beaten down. Isn't that an amazing witness? Wouldn't you like to go to court with them? Here, and we do. We can go to court. And what Jesse shared this morning is literally us realizing who he is and then the response that we need to have. So as we do this, take this time to think, for those of us that I think have felt like we have failed this past year in ways that are just very painful to us, that we just keep in mind this witness along with the others.
I was thinking too, as Jesse was sharing that, the verse in Matthew came to my mind. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Not blessed are those who do it perfectly, who achieve it, who are righteous, but who hunger and thirst for it. Right? And we want that more than anything, don't we? We want to be with God. We want to be like him. And I don't do it perfectly all the time, but I'm hungry for it and I'm thirsty for it. And God says, you're blessed. I'm going to meet you in that then. He's a God of grace who meets us when we're honest and vulnerable. He says, you're blessed. I see you and I love you. And it's hard to be human. God knows. It's messy. But he says, if you hunger for it, if you show up again and again, I'm going to meet you there.
our God, and all will see how great